the food we ate in the 1970s and 1980s. For me, the past can be broken up into three sections: the stuff we ate at home, the hometown restaurants, and the national stuff. Now, the food we ate at home, I haven't eaten some of this stuff in 40 years, and I really don't miss it that much. Like Cornish hens. Like, what was the purpose of a Cornish hen? There was hardly anything on it, and there were just these tiny little birds that you would eat. City chickens with the little breaded pieces of pork or veal on little wooden skewers. And this was before pork was the other white meat. But back then it was fatty and kind of pink. We had onion sandwiches. I mean, seriously, the whole sandwich was just onions on bread. Or beefsteak tomato sandwiches with a little bit of pepper and a little bit of salt, because back then tomatoes tasted so good they actually had flavor to them. It's not like the stuff you buy today. For dessert, we had cinnamon sugar white bread with butter. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't fly today so much. My dad used to drink buttermilk with pepper in it. And I can guarantee you, and never in my life again, will I eat Jell-O with fruit in it. And it would come shaped like in a Jell-O ring, or worse, in a fish mold. Why would you shape Jell-O like a fish? I have no idea. Now, some of the things I do miss. I miss like deviled crabs. They were these really brown breaded deviled crabs in a sort of a tin half shell, and you'd melt some butter and pour on them. And you would buy them at the grocery store. They were like everywhere, and I don't see them anymore. My uncle would bring liverwurst and put Limburger cheese on it and a slice of onion. It was the smelliest sandwich you can think of. And he would think it was funny to wrap one up and stick it in somebody's coat pocket. And they'd be walking around smelling so horrible and wondering what happened. The one that I do miss the most, though, is the pork sandwiches. My mother would make pork chops for dinner, breaded pork chops, and she would always make a few extra, put them in the refrigerator, and then the next day, put them on a bun, and you might put a little bit of mayonnaise on them, Miracle Whip all the time, and maybe a few pickles. And these things were really good. I haven't had one in 40 years. I think maybe I'm going to have to try one again soon. While the pork sandwich was a win for my mother, tell me why so many people back then used to fry up a hamburger and then put it on white bread. And the grease would soak through the white bread and it would start to fall apart. And then they'd put a slice of beefsteak tomato on it, which was really good. But if you know what a beefsteak tomato was like in the 70s, it was so juicy. So that juice would be dissolving the top layer of the bread, and the grease would be dissolving the bottom layer of the bread. It tasted really good, but it failed as a sandwich. Also, we'd go over to my grandmother's house, and she would serve me all the toasted cheese sandwiches I could eat, and they were made in a new thing called a microwave. And we weren't allowed to stand within 5 feet of it, and whatever you do, don't look into the microwave or it might blind you for life. Although I really miss those toasted cheese sandwiches, and for some reason my grandmother always had ginger ale or 7-Up. Or if you had a toothache, she'd give you a shot of whiskey. And I had posted this on a board recently and found out that everybody who had toothaches or when they were like little kids and teething, they'd put whiskey on it and alcohol on it or vodka on it. What is that? I mean, is this good parenting? I guess that's what grandparents are for, to give you a shot of whiskey when you have a toothache. As a kid, every piece of fruit that I ate in the summer and all the berries that I ate in the summer, I picked myself. We had apple trees at the local park that you would eat them for like a month. And we had so many apples. Imagine having so much food that we'd have apple fights. We would throw them at each other and they would sting like crazy. Or we'd go into the woods and pick blackberries and raspberries. If you got real lucky, you'd find a neighbor who had some blueberry bushes and they would let you pick and eat some off of there. My one friend had a giant cherry tree. We'd climb up into the cherry tree and pick cherries and eat them, and then you'd get like a really sour stomach later. where did all the trees go? And nobody grows pears anymore. Nobody has fruit trees around. It's a shame. It was so wonderful picking yourself. Now you have to go to the grocery store and you just buy what they have. Then there's the hometown favorites, like the heel at Naples, where they would take a half a loaf of bread and stuff it with meat and sauce. Or you'd go out to Hearts. Sometimes I close my eyes and I can picture myself standing in front of Hearts, and they would open the doors at 10 o'clock and you'd rush in, and there would be this big multi-layered stand that had all these loaves of fresh baked bread. They were still warm, and they were 5 for $1. I'd grab 5 of them in my little arms and rush and check out and go out to the car, and me and my dad would tear one in half, and I'd take my half and make these warm dough balls and eat them, and then break off the little pieces of crust and throw them out the window for the birds and watch them carry little pieces of crust away. They were so good. You had Pasquale's Pizza downtown with the pepperoni that they'd put on top and then toast it. You'd have toasted pepperoni. You had the D'Angelo's Pizza up at the Hollywood Shopping Plaza. It was so good. Of course, the Treasure Island hot dogs. I mean, the hot dogs, imagine a hot dog being so good that anybody over 40 still mentions them to this day. Rectangle buns that were toasted. They put the hot dog on it that came off a roller, and they'd put ketchup, mustard on it, slip it down into a little wax sleeve, and you'd buy a whole bag of these things and take home, or you'd eat them in the car. They were so good. I'm shocked to this day that I never see this like on a local menu or something, at least for the kids. But I bet you if somebody would put that on, people would be coming in all the time taking out bags of hot dogs. In the 1980s, we would go to the Hi-Hat for lunch occasionally. One day a week, they had the Polish bar. It had haluski, mashed potatoes, cabbage rolls, and a few other items, and it was all you could eat. We would eat so much that we'd go back to work and not want to do anything for the rest of the day. We'd just want to take a nap at the desk. But, of course, the king of hometown foods is DeCarlo's Pizza. It's been there forever. You would go in, and for me, all my memories rotate around the one across from the police station. You'd come off the Market Street Bridge, make a left, and there it was. Lines out the door practically. And you always said this silent prayer that the guy in front of you wasn't going to order too many slices, because you had to wait, and the trays kept coming out, and people kept taking all the pizza, and you had to wait another 5 minutes for a tray, and then the guy in front of you, he orders just too many slices, and now your choice is like, do I wait another 5 minutes? But no, you just take the rest of the remaining slices, and you end up leaving with 1 or 2 less slices than you went in for. But it's so good. Now, I've always maintained that a perfect relationship is where one spouse likes the centers of the pizza, and the other one likes the crusts. And the person who likes the corners, there's no accounting for taste. That this always led to the perfect marriage. And I asked this on a message board one time, and I had hundreds of people confirm what I always thought, that one of the spouses always just insisted that the crusts were the best, and the other one always likes the centers. Also, let me ask you, is there anybody out there who ever ate DeCarlo's Pizza off a plate? No. You always take the top lid off, and you split the pizza up that way. Some eat it out of the original bottom part of the box, which is the best because you have that cheese that's stuck to the wax paper. And then the other person gets their pizza and puts it in the lid. One of the genius ideas of DeCarlo's Pizza is the detachable lid, which substitutes as a plate. Then, of course, we had the national food, but it had local memories, right? I mean, you sat downtown at Burger Chef. I'd get the Big Chef sandwich, and you'd look out the window and watch the crowds walking by on the sidewalk, or you drive out to Pizza Hut. This is the Pizza Hut that was clear out in Wintersville by the drive-in, and they had a thick and chewy pizza. They don't sell that anymore. Or a taco pizza that had cut up lettuce and tomatoes, and you put hot sauce up on it. Or how about 4-star pizza? I always thought four-star pizza was going to put Domino's out of business, which is why it was a good idea that I never bought stock in things because I picked the wrong thing every single time. Or how about the barbecue chicken at Kentucky Fried Chicken? This is the old barbecue chicken. Had like a bite to it, and I guess they did away with it, I was told one time, because it didn't set up well. If they didn't sell it like in 15 minutes, it would get all gunky and and they couldn't do anything with it. Or going up to Fox's Pizza and get a wedgie. Those were so good. But then, of course, the mall opens up in the mid 1970s, and you had those jumbo chili cheese dogs at Hill's department store, or the hot dogs at Der Dog Haus, or Long John Silver's, where it was like walking into a bow of a ship, and you'd get in line, and all the food was sitting in those glass windows, and you would stare into it, and it seemed like it took you forever to get your food there, but it was so good. And Elby's with the fish and chips, and they put it in the fake newspapers, and you had Grecian bread and that chocolate ice cream cake, hot fudge sauce on it, or the giant strawberry waffles with whipped cream, and there's big hamburgers of theirs. Sweet Williams with the orange sherbet cones, or their hamburgers, they had really good hamburgers. Or York Steakhouse with the fish almondine, or the half chickens, which they served with necks on them. I mean, that was kind of like weird and kind of creepy, but they were pretty good. uh, you know, is it wrong that if I had a time machine, I wouldn't want to go back in time and visit great important people or look at important dates or try to fix time or anything? If I had a time machine, I would just pop back occasionally into the 70s and 80s and have lunch. I mean, that's all I really want. There's so much food and so many good times and eating with friends and sitting up at Davis's Tavern and having those big fish sandwiches, and it just goes on and on. It just seems like the food's not the same as it always was. Oh well. As always, it's me, Camroy, here on YouTube.